as we have talked to people, they've come out of their private shame and they've said to us, interest rates are killing us.
We understand that money makes the world go round, but it needs to go round fairly.
And we hear the call of thousands of years of religious tradition and 200 years of American law.
This is a national problem, and it requires national attention.
Stop the abuse of usury, and then perhaps our capitalist free market system may gain credibility and blessing from above.
We propose a 10% cap on interest rates for credit cards and personal loans, including payday loans and rapid return tax refund businesses.
We have gathered here to say enough, and 10% is enough.
We will be meeting with the CEOs of major financial institutions, JP Morgan, Chase, Citibank, Capital One, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo Wachovia.
What message do we want to send, Mr. Lewis? 10% what? 10% what? 10%
Let us pray. Metro IAF's 17 affiliated organizations on the East Coast and the Midwest represent over 450 congregations, schools, neighborhood associations, local unions, and other community-based nonprofits. These 450 institutions represent over 500,000 families.
By concentrating on the places where we live, we have been able to win on affordable health care for all citizens in Massachusetts, living wages in Baltimore and New York. We have been able to win on affordable housing through Nehemiah homes in New York, Baltimore, and Washington. Win after win after win, locally. But this issue must be dealt with on a much larger scale.
The titans of commerce and the business elites usually prefer the religious community to leave the management of the economy to them. Let them find new and better ways to maximize profit, and everyone will benefit. The trouble is that, again, the smartest guys in the room turned out to be fraudulent, incompetent, and reckless, and millions of ordinary people are paying the price.
There's nothing hidden about this campaign. There's nothing secret about this campaign. This campaign is simple. Just lower your interest rates, because 10% is enough.
Say that with me, usury. Usury. That word has fallen out of use over the last few years, and today we bring it back.
Usury is, in essence, debt slavery. The way we understand its manifestation here in contemporary America is outrageous interest rates on credit cards, payday loans, rent-a-centers.
Yes, usury theologically is rich people using their power, money power, over poor people. That in all the great faiths is seen as sinful.
Here's a new idea. Limit the amount of interest banks can charge. It's all in these books.
Any profit that is generated based on a formula that drives people into debt is usury.
But we'll be told that this is not our business. We'll be told we're not bankers, we're not economists, we don't understand the way markets work. The problem with that is we understand all too well.
I thought, oh great, I've got good credit. I finally arrived. I've gotten credit cards with 0% interest. Then they jumped to 8.24, then 12.99, then up to 23.99. And at the beginning of this month, one increased to 28.24%.
My wife was diagnosed early in 2000 with cancer. We ended up with a bill of almost $30,000 we had to pay. I ended up going into the hospital then for 2 months with a heart arrhythmia. And when I got out, we had missed some credit card payments. My interest rates had been raised on some of the accounts. They were up to almost 30% interest.
I was going through some financial problems, and I seen a commercial that says, no credit. Your title is your credit. That sounded pretty good to me, since my credit was pretty messed up, but I had a title to a car. I went to Virginia. I took in my title for a $2,000 loan. With that $2,000 loan, I walked out with the $1,100 because of the fees I had to pay that day. Afterwards, my payments were $600 a month. So I said, well, I'll pay that off quickly, the $600 a month, to be done with it. However, that $600 was just the finance rate. None of that went towards the actual bill itself. So on a $1,100 loan, and after 18 months of paying it off, it cost me $11,000.
This has got to stop, and 10% is enough.
Do any of you believe that we should have a law in America that has a usury rate? Do you think there's ever a rate that's usurious, that's obscene, that shouldn't be charged? It's 36% usurious. Could you answer that?
Usury laws have been the rule for all but the last 30 years in the United States.
In the 1970s, I was actually in banking myself and was considering banking as a career. I was a branch manager with then First National Bank in Maryland. And at that time, a 9% interest rate was considered exorbitant.
Somehow banks did very well, made a lot of money in 1970 and 1960 and 1950. They did very well with these rates. But they got deregulated in 1980.
When the major banks and financial institutions decided that they didn't like to be restrained in how much they could charge, and they had a concerted lobbying campaign to upend it, and they succeeded.
I think a lot of people are discovering that usurious interest rates are having a warping effect on our whole economy.
The more money that goes toward interest, the less money people have to buy consumer goods, which means the less manufacturers can produce, retailers can sell.
It's also warped our economy in that if you can make 24 or 28% loaning money to middle class and poor people, why would you then invest in a manufacturing facility where your rate might be 7 or 8%?
Perhaps if we make some changes, then banks will get back to lending money for productive purposes and not trade in paper. Because this trading in paper has destroyed this economy and has destroyed the lives of many, many people in the United States.
Are we clear that we want to meet with Mr. Ken Lewis?
Yes! When I heard about this campaign, I really didn't think there was something that was, I thought maybe it was really unrealistic. But today, when Reverend Hamilton went to the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, they came down, met with us, and they took our letter. And then when we went to Bank of America, we marched out there, and their folks came down, and they met with us. I said, okay, we're on to something.
In Washington, D.C., we sent out 5 teams to 5 different banks. Branch managers were kind of thrown. They were sometimes, in some banks, we had to tie up the line, changing dollars into pennies in order to get the branch manager to move. But in each case, everybody came back with the branch manager either having faxed the president or their CEO or having called them.
Bank of America.
No change takes place without pressure or the threat of pressure. And that's what we bring. Pressure and the threat of pressure.
So our hope is the Royal Bank of Scotland will, in the next few months, set an example, agree to a new card with a much lower interest rate than anybody else has, and that will then escalate across the rest of the banks, persuade the government that it is possible, maybe to even legislate on this matter, and the world will be a better and a safer place.
10% is good enough for God, 10% is good enough for Citigroup and for Wells Fargo.
This is the right issue at the right time with the right group leading it, Metro IAF.
Clear.